Okay, great, Ms. Nizer, go ahead.
I'm Esther Nizer, and I was the NAACP president in the year that the naming of the Martin Luther King Way and the coalition was formed. So I'm excited to be here and talk with you as well.
John, you have unmiked.
Yeah, I'm driving, so I can't, I can't really participate much. I'm going over Afton Mountain, but I've always appreciated the work of the MLK committee and its work in the city of Harrisonburg for bringing to the forefront of public attention the needs and the desires and the strength of the united community that we hope to become.
Thank you so much, John. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Virginia on Tutelo and Saponi People's Land, also known as Menita, Virginia. And I'm new to this coalition, so thanks for having me.
Anyone else? We're doing quick introductions until somebody is prepared to lead us in an invocation.
Hi, my name's Tommy LeBeau. I guess all I can say is I kind of found out about this group from earlier when I was in campaigning for Bernie. I met Cody, and then he told me about MLK Junior Way and how you guys in Harrisonburg were able to change the name of that street. That's really great. I'm coming from Stanton, so it's not too far, and it's really neat to find out about how all this happened. And yep, nice to meet you guys.
Great. And we have folks from all over. We welcome everybody since we've gone virtual. And with that, Raymond, would you like to say who you are?
Hi, yeah, this is Raymond. It's good to see you, Bodie. I apologize, I don't have a camera right now. I'm kind of in transition. I think you know me as being in Alaska. I've just recently relocated to Newark, New Jersey. So I'm enjoying North Jersey, a little closer to you. It'd be nice to get down there. I'll visit sometime. While we get started, I'll try to get a camera on. And thanks everybody for being here. I look forward to what will be a refresher and reintroduction, I guess I'd say. Thank you.
Great. So our program is soon going to start with an invocation and then some words from Dr. King. And then we will be over to, you can see the program, everybody, at mlkjrway.org. Or Edwan, welcome. We're looking for somebody, Edwan, to do a brief invocation. Are you willing to do that for us? Bless the day for us today.
Sure. I usually don't jump into it, but why not? I'll give it a shot. It's Reverend Martin Luther King Day. Why not?
Yes, sir.
I will start as kind of in a grounding. I usually don't do a prayer, but I do like to at least try and quote somebody humanitarian on days like this to remind ourselves of the humanitarian whose birthday it is, right? I think I'm gonna use the Dalai Lama today. I want to use Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa. I use Mother Teresa. I'll use two of her quotes. Every time you smile at someone is an action of love, a gift to that person and a beautiful thing. And one that I think is very profound that she did say on her deathbed was that not all of us can do great things, but it is the least of us who find a way to do the greatest of them. So just some humility and humanity to start with.
Thank you for that. We will continue next with a reading of some words from Dr. King to orient us to the history of our street renaming. Would you be willing to read a section of words from Dr. King for us?
As I put it,
Okay.
I'm definitely happy to oblige.
Great. Okay, I will paste in the chat some excerpts from Dr. King's Showdown for Nonviolence, which is a central piece of work for our street renaming.
And while you're doing that, I think my favorite quote by him is returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding the deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Mhm.
Experts from a showdown for nonviolence. We call our demonstration a campaign for jobs and income because we feel that the economic question is the most crucial that Black people and poor people generally are confronted. We need an economic bill of rights. This would guarantee a job to all people who want to work and are able to work. It would also guarantee an income for all who are not able to. Some people are too young, some are too old, some are physically disabled, and yet in order to live, they need income. It would mean creating certain public service jobs, but that could be done in a few weeks. Our whole campaign, therefore, will center the job question with other demands, like housing, that are closely tied to it. On the educational front, often pupils are so far behind that they need more and special attention, the best quality of education that can be given. We've had the WPA when the nation was on the verge of bankruptcy. We should be able to do something when we're sick with wealth.
Thank you so much.
I have an excerpt I'd like to read if I can.
Oh, please, yes.
Well, it's not even an excerpt. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's related to the work that I'm doing. And this is a speech that Dr. King gave when he was during the Memphis struggle. And he said, all labor has dignity, but you are doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it's a crime for people to live in this rich nation and yet receive starvation wages. And I just think it's, very timely that, those same words resonate today with the fights around unions and collective bargaining happening, not just out here in Virginia Beach and Tidewater area, but up there in Richmond and in other parts of the state and the country. So I want to highlight that. And I think it's fitting, especially the excerpt that Edwin just read as well.
Absolutely. And with that, Ms. Neiser, would you like to bring it home and tell us a little bit about how this came to be here in Harrisonburg?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and happy King Day to all of you. It started actually in 2013. Stan Macklin, I don't know if any of you remember him, had a museum here in Harrisonburg, the Harriet Tubman. And for about 3 to 4 months, probably more than 3 months, he would go to city council faithfully. And he would basically say, we need to have a street named after Dr. King. And finally convinced the town council that that should take place. And so they started looking at streets to name. At first, they looked at Vine Street, which is in the neighborhood of the predominantly African-American community years ago. And they determined that there were many residential properties there, that would have a big impact on the community. And while it would be a good thing, it could be a bad thing for the residents. So they started looking at other places. And Cantrell Avenue came up. And it's a short street, mostly commercial property, not a lot of residential property. And so they zeroed in on naming Cantrell Street. I guess the good thing is that social media was not as prevalent as it is now, because there was a lot of pushback. When the town council determined that Cantrell would be the street, the coalition was started at that point, maybe informally prior to, but became more efficient. Of course, Pody was involved from the very beginning. Elaine Blakey, who was local, became the coordinator for naming the street. I was the president of the NAACP, so of course I was involved and our membership was involved in making sure that this happened. It also included town council people. Kai Dager and A. Shearer served as council liaisons. The feeling was that this was for the city, so city needed to have input and provide direction. And so it was a collaboration of the community, all in the community, and city council. Elaine Blakey, as I mentioned earlier, Mrs. Blakey spearheaded that, and we met, I don't want to say every week, but there are times that I think we did, because it was more than just naming the street. We understood its importance, and we had to make sure that the community and those who were not excited about changing their address understood the importance. And it wasn't just putting up signs, because part of the signage was to plan a march, if you will, across the bridge that is Martin Luther King Way. And so all of that had to take place. And then, of course, there was a reception afterward, because we have food after many of our events to fellowship and celebrate. And so the timing was to have the signage put up right before Martin Luther King Day. And we told a lot of our committee members, the sign's going to be up early. Please don't go out and take pictures and share them out with anyone. We wanted it to be as big as it was. And so the march was planned, or the walk was planned, if you will. We pulled some of our elders, I don't mean pull as in pull, but we encouraged our elders who were excited to be there to participate. The one lady that comes to mind is Mrs. Doris Harper Allen. She actually has a building at JMU named after her, but she had gone to the March on Washington with her son when Dr. King spoke. And so she was in the front, and some of our elders were in the front. Some were in wheelchairs. We wanted to make sure that we honored them as we honored Dr. King. And so it was a celebration that we had on that day. And thanks to Pody and his coalition, it continues to today. So next year, I think we're hitting 10 years. So I'm pretty certain it's going to be bigger as the first time, because it's just a good reminder of what happens when people come together and work together and they're focused on the goal. We didn't get sidetracked. Mrs. Blakey kept us focused. If we got off task in the meeting talking about what we were having for dinner, she made sure that we came back and focused in on what we needed to. So it was a great way to honor Dr. King, and it really it started with Mr. Stan Macklin, who we all know has left us. But thanks for having me here. I'm glad to see the coalition is still going and doing great things in the community. Or you may want to add anything that I may have missed.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And it is sad that many of our elders have passed. So this meeting today is as much, it's our smallest meeting so far, but I count this as a planning meeting for the decade, for the 10th anniversary. Indeed, Mr. Macklin did something that was great, even above the high aspirations that he had set. I hope that he is seeing this today with pride and happiness for the change that he really brought over the entire city. The very fabric of our city has fundamentally changed thanks to the work that was inspired by his aspiration. Each year, People's Day has happened, and People's Day has always been independent of the institutions. That was part of why Mr. Macklin called it People's Day, because we had the universities, we had city council, we had the major donors, people with lots of power, but Mr. Macklin was always clear that this was an event of the people, of the ordinary people. So each year People's Day has happened, and it's been that way. We've always been in cooperation, and in the ecosystem of the rest of the powers and institutions that always have carried that forward. And it's been my great honor to serve as the secretary when he was the chair of the coalition after the street renaming task force. We now in the coalition are down to only a secretary. We do not have a chair. We do not have a treasurer, but I continue to witness and record, and it's been the honor of my life to do that. I should mention one more departed elder. You've seen on the website, I mentioned J. Barclay Rosser Jr. And Professor Rosser was not a part of our organizing in the committees, but to give a sense of just the reach of these efforts. Barclay Rosser was an eminent professor of economics. That's how I came to know about James Madison University, because as we were starting our PhD program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, which gave rise to an approach to economics that is what we turned to during the COVID recovery, among other things, and which has changed the structure of the European Union so that the euro works more functionally. All of that started at UMKC 20 years ago, and Barclay Rosser was an inspiration to us. So when I came here, I was very excited to, well, I came here because of Barclay, because I saw, oh, what's this James Madison University? That's where Rosser is. When we moved into our street renaming, I let him know, and he has an interesting background. His father led up the United States space program. Before that, he laid the foundations of arithmetic. Professor Rosser's ancestors go back to Thomas Rosser, who was a general here in the Valley. So Barclay had, Professor Rosser had a lot of reach, and he got on board with the renaming, and he was able to take the spirit of our renaming to corners of the community that I didn't have access to, that didn't come and interact with many of the rest of us. And Charlie Chenault, who was a pivotal vote in the street renaming, greatly respected Professor Rosser and was close to many of the people who also had great respect for Professor Rosser. And when Professor Rosser said, this is good, a whole wing of people came aboard as well and heard the message. Now, Professor Rosser died last week, and that's a great loss for me, a great loss for the community, and I wanted to note him as well. We should mention also Fred Gibson. We dedicated a previous People's Day to the passing of Fred Gibson, who was very close to Dr. King, was a mentor to many of us, brought harmony to our movements. When Mr. Gibson was here, we worked together. He was the silent, often in the background, harmonizing presence that made us just work together in ways that were unprecedented before and that we've not been able to reach since. I hope we can reach that level of cooperation again for our decade anniversary and the spirit of the great elders who have been before us. Anybody else care to share with us your memories of our street renaming, or how this is connecting with you and your work?
I guess I could just say that I'm really glad to be here, and so glad to hear both Esther and you, Poti, tell some of the history. It's so inspiring to me, and the elders being involved, and because Martin Luther King Jr. was such a great man, and I'm just learning so much about him all the time, about his influence and how he now and his ideas coincide with modern monetary theory, really, MMT, that the federal government that doesn't have to pay back all its money. It creates money. It's not terrible to have our debt, that it's more terrible to have no services to the poor people and to the people who need it, the citizens. So anyway, I'm just pleased with all this, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Betty.
Oh, I guess I should say that I got involved back in 2020 when I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in Virginia. And that's how, and then the Virginia Progressives movement came out of that, the group that I go to on Wednesday evenings, and learned about MMT and all that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the reach so that we get a sense of just how broadly this has touched people's lives. Thank you, Betty.
Betty, I appreciate you your reference to MMT, because someone else was reading something of Dr. King's, a quotation, and it stressed economic welfare. You know, that it's very important. And I have learned, trying to follow MMT, trying to learn from Poti, that this can make such a difference if we understand MMT. It's not something that's being proposed. It's not somebody's idea. It's a description of what we're doing right now, but it is not accepted by many people. And this is for political reasons. And if it were accepted, if people understood the vast spending capacity our government has, it would make such a difference to so many people that are now struggling economically. And I think this very much ties in with Dr. King's work and the things that he said.
Thank you, Mona. Any other reflections on this part, how our street renaming has touched you, how Dr. King's work has touched you?
I can say something.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not from Virginia, but I was just tuning in. But I feel like I like how Martin Luther King Day makes everybody come together and work together for a bigger purpose.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shanice. Where are you calling in from?
Buffalo, from New York, Buffalo, New York.
Do you have any organizing that you do there or experience that you'd care to share with us here? I know Buffalo's been through a lot over the.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm part of AmeriCorps program, so that's how I was looking up different Martin Luther King things we could do. And I did community service today, but I was just tuning in to the virtual ones, and that's how I found this one.
Great. Well, you are very, very welcome.
Thank you.
Tommy, would you like to share with us?
Well, all I can say is it was really, what I think is really neat about what Martin Luther King did is he went from starting out trying to get racial equality, and then once he got some progress there, then he pushed on to economic equality, which was a big part of making racial equality happen. And then not just that, but in the end, everybody in the country was suffering and is continuing to suffer economically. So it's just really neat how he was able to pull all that together and kind of unite everyone around that, because in the end, there was racial discrimination to start with, and that and continuing even today. But then he brought the economics into it to kind of unite all people around this idea, hey, we need to help everyone help. And then bring in the idea that we really need to guarantee jobs for those who want a job and an income for those who need that. I mean, that's really what we're still going for today. And I think a lot of people don't realize that he brought the economics into it as well. Yeah. So hopefully if we can get that kind of message out, people can realize that no, it's not just, a lot of people think Martin Luther King's work is done now. You know, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Martin Luther King, I agree with him. But it's like, hey, there's still more to be done. We're not done. We're not done going for what he was still working towards. So we got to keep going. It's not over yet.
Thank you, Tommy. I see agreement in the audience there. And anybody else care to chime in the last few minutes of this section before we go to our organized component?
You know, I think about all of his speeches and all of his quotes and how they still apply. And I'm trying to think if there are others that have their quotes still apply. All of his speeches, even the poem read this earlier today about the economic, we're going all the way back to the 60s to apply to this century. You know what I mean? And I keep thinking about, you know, how he was able to touch. I remember my dad, when I was very young, and Dr. King, we would watch him on black and white TV in the living room. And my dad said, "I'm glad he's nonviolent." And I remember looking at him saying, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Imagine what would happen if he were not." You know, and I think about that he just had a way of providing grace to people who mistreated him and inspired those of us who watched that mistreatment to go out and do good and not go out and do harm. So this day, I usually go on the social media just to see the quotes. You know, have I missed a quote that I haven't seen? Because there's always one that ties into what we need to do. So for me, his legacy has been that he is still telling us. And I think a lot of us are beginning to listen, those of us who heard him live in the 60s, and now seeing young folks come in and say his words are speaking to me. That adds a lot of value to those of us that have been on this trail for a while, to see that folks are still out there trying to get people to get a living wage, still out there trying to get people to get healthcare, still out there trying to get education, still out there trying to get school system, on and on and on. And so to hear the young man speak about how he talked about civil rights, but then he moved in because he wasn't focused in on just the civil rights. He was focusing on Black and poor covers everybody. So I just reflect on him a lot on this particular day, and think there's more to do and there's more that needs to be done. And, you know, it's like, if not me, then who kind of thing. So, so thanks for putting this on together. Kind of, I needed this boost again to get back out.
This is Raymond. If I could, I really love everything I've heard here. Thank you so much. There are two speeches that I listen to on this anniversary, sometimes throughout the year. One is the Beyond Vietnam speech by Dr. King, and the other is the Mountaintop speech, which he gave in Memphis just before he was assassinated. Listening to those this morning was really powerful. It always is. I'm also inspired by more contemporary work done, inspired by Dr. King with the Poor People's Campaign. And it's done as much as just about anything to inform my organizing, to have been involved with Reverend Barber in organizing a state committee for the Poor People's Campaign where I live. And it's a wonderful example to me of how his legacy, not just his history, but his legacy of direct action is still with us and can be a powerful force. I think that the Poor People's Campaign today has been very effective and inspiring for a lot of, I was going to say a lot of young organizers, but across generations. So yeah, I appreciate that we're honoring Dr. King, and hope I can keep his message in my heart every day, particularly the fierce urgency of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Yes.
Just
Betty.
mentioned about that I'm becoming aware of the generosity between nations too, like a global generosity that Martin Luther King was interested in too, I think. And I think we're starting to do it in the COP conference, the climate conference, and nations were pledging money to the poorer nations that were getting more of the effects of climate change. You know, I don't know if they followed through on it, but they've at least made a plan to start being more sharing among nations, because we're all in this together, you know, and that's what Martin Luther King knew too, that it was a global neighborhood.
Yes, thank you for bringing that environmental component in, Betty. I think if he was here today, many of us could speculate. When he spoke about war in the final days, he looked at war as a threat to humanity. His spiritual heart was back with humanity ultimately in our global survival. I wonder how he would think about the climate threat that has brought us this pandemic, for example, and that promises to bring more disaster like that, and how he would guide, how he would speak on that. And we've not heard from Ms. Islam in the formal part as well. Care to share anything with us? You were there from the beginning as well. If you can.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Cody. I'm just grateful that I'm able to tie into this virtual event. Due to my circumstances, I haven't been out and about in the community. I'm a lifetime member of the NAACP, and Esther Nizer reminded me of the wonderful organization and leadership that she provided during this year when this program first got started. So, and I'm also grateful that we're remembering, and on a yearly basis, if not more, that education is so important. You know, just it's interesting, and the longer I live, the more I realize that sometimes people are greater in death than they were in life, and we respect them more, and we get a chance to just benefit from their legacies. So, that being said, I'm really interested in supporting this idea that we have to talk about the total history in order to understand the civil rights and the economic component, that they're totally linked together. And I'm just grateful that reconnecting with this particular group to just discuss different ideas about economic well-being and progress, etc. Thanks for letting me share, and thanks for putting on this program.
Thank you. It is a great honor, and you were an inspiration to me in my organizing from the very beginning. It really has been an honor. I remember stopping by your booth at an African American festival long ago, and talking history and listening history. That really inspired me and continues to be an inspiration to this day. So great honor that you're here with us, or me. Any other shares before we think about next steps?
I've enjoyed what I've heard, and I'm excited about all the conversations, and I'm now feeling inspired to go out and do a little bit more than I have.